LeBron James has, or had, Skip Bayless. More on that in the future, I guess. Anyway, Caitlin Clark has her own in Sheryl Swoopes. So if you haven't been keeping up with the WNBA, Caitlin Clark has been absolutely dominating, yes, dominating, more on that in the video, in her rookie season, and it has definitely turned a lot of eyes. She's got her own faction of haters and fans, and it's pretty interesting to watch from afar, and one of those being none other than the Sheryl Swoopes. She has been on Gilbert Arenas several times talking about what Caitlin Clark is or isn't doing. Now, Gilbert Arenas is oftentimes a spot where they're doing a lot of crazy takes. I'm looking at you, Rashard McCants.
I'm going to be honest with you. Jokic ain't better than the Gasol brothers. I'm just all around.
And the latest podcast is no different, where they spend a lot of time defining or redefining what the word dominate means.
Right?
No, she dominated in college.
She dominated. So when she says you won't come here and dominate off the rip. Dominate, right? When she said dominate, when we're saying dominate.
Anyway, let's get into it.
Dominate, right? When we're talking about Caitlin, we're talking about when she said dominate, when we're saying dominate, we're thinking what she does in college.
Score the ball.
Mm-hmm.
She's dominated college, right?
No, she dominated in college.
She dominated. So when she says you won't come here and dominate off the rip, averaging 17 is not dominated compared to averaging 30-something for 4 straight years.
But that
right?
was also like the first half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like after the break, I still don't think she's dominating, but she's a different player than she was in the first half of the season. And I think because of her adjustment and her ability to play first half of the season, you have a break. And it was great that the Olympics was this year, right? That she.
So let me cut in here. Here's a fun drinking game for everyone. Take a sip of water, because that's all we condone here on this channel, every time you hear the word dominate in this video. Also, can anybody get a counter going in the comments? I greatly appreciate it. So it's very important to establish what the word dominate means. One key takeaway when you talk about domination, I think, and we're not talking about DeAndre Ayton, I think that is a super duper loose and subjective term to use, because you could ask 10 different people what dominating would be, and you probably don't have too many of the same answers. And so that's one big problem with trying to focus on that word and argue semantics. Based on my own definition, I do think that she's dominating this season, and it's been pretty apparent in my opinion, because she's been probably, and it's not close, but I want to say probably for you fans of other players out there, the best rookie, again, not close in my opinion, this season. And she's been so transcendently good thus far that she has her team in the playoffs, which is amazing for a rookie leading their team there. Also, she is clearly one of the best players in the league right now. And also, you have to consider the fact of the way she is defended. She's getting that Steph Curry type of treatment where everyone is constantly watching her, keyed in on her, and they are paying high attention to her. So all of her stats, all of her accumulation on a game-to-game basis does have a little bit more leeway than the average player does. So to me, I do think she's dominating. But these guys, their point is that she's not unstoppable, no answer to her. She's putting up 35 and 10 every night, which she actually kind of just did that similarly the other night anyway.
Swing, I get a layup. Stats change. Things are factors on the floor that we don't get to see because we're glorifying the stat when we talk about dominating. And you look at the passing, like, that's an obvious thing. And Alyssa Thomas is probably the only one that could be like, yo, I'm the passer.
Yeah, but
I'm the dominating passer.
You can't say that when every.
So they're not wrong when you talk about the way that Caitlin struggled a little bit in the early season as she adjusted and got acclimated to playing in the WNBA. As you take a look at her stats here, she goes from 17, 6, and 5 with the average game score of 11 for the first 10 games. And each 10-game segment, this gets better and better. There have been other games played since this 30th one, but as you see, between 21 and 30, she spikes all the way to 22, 11, and 6. And assist-to-turnover ratio is also high at 2.1. And here's a look at her field goals. Her field goal attempts started at 13, dipped to 11, but then spiked in that same period where we were talking about her having a great 21-30 stretch to 16. Her three-point attempts also spiked. Her percentage does dip a bit, but the true shooting is also extremely good at basically 60%, 59. And you could tell she was going through a bit of a feel-out period in that 11 to 20 stretch because her field goal attempts actually went down from the first 10 games into that second 10 games. But they do spike back again up after that. So you could tell she definitely started to get pretty comfortable in that area and got much more aggressive. So next, I wanted to show this awesome graph that compares Caitlin as a rookie to average performance from rookie players in the WNBA. Now, quick note, like I said earlier, this stuff is pretty outdated, about 22 days outdated to be exact. And her current stats on the season are 19.5 points, 5.7 rebounds, 8.4 assists, and 1.3 steals. So all of her numbers have actually gone up, except for the steals and rebounds going down a little bit, I guess. So either gone up or about the same, whereas on this image, they're showing her at 18 points even, 8.2 assists, 5.8 rebounds. But when you look at her comparison, for pretty much all the major metrics, she's top 3 across the board. It's pretty crazy. So in terms of minutes, she's second versus the average rookie comparison. She is at fourth, tied for fourth for points, first in assists, first in rebounds, fourth in steals, first in blocks. Now, again, this is the average performance, so this will take into consideration not only rookies that are performing highly, but also those that aren't, so keep that in mind. But this is pretty interesting when you see her across the field, what she's doing. And then you look at the splits for shooting, they're pretty much in average line, so that's not too crazy there. Her true shooting is extremely high, though. And like I said, if the case is simply because she had a small period in the beginning of her career where she wasn't able to, quote-unquote, dominate to the same degree she did in college, and that's the justification Sheryl needs, then sure, right? But I can't say that it makes her sound like any less of a hater to me personally. I can understand what she's trying to say. I just don't agree with it. How many of you guys feel the same way?
When we're talking about that, like, no rookie is in dominating form, right? When we're saying dominating, you go through history and say, well, Candace Parker dominated her rookie year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cap.
You don't feel that.
She was great her rookie year. She was better than expected her rookie year. But if you take her rookie year compared to her dominating year, is it?
I made the statement about both Angel and Caitlin, not just Caitlin.
Right.
My statement was, I don't think either of them are going to come into the league and dominate immediately, meaning what they did in college.
Over all of the players in the W.
And the reason why I said it is because you have a player like an A'ja Wilson who has been in this league for a while and gets better every single year, that, and maybe this was more so for the new fans who never watched the WNBA. So my point being, there is hella talent in this league. It's not going to be as easy as y'all think it's going to be.
Right.
But also saying, don't put all that pressure on these rookies, and just say Angel and Caitlin in particular, because that's who everybody was talking about. Like, don't put all that pressure on them to feel like they got to come in and do what they did in college. Like, let them get to the league, let them adjust.
So again, valid points from Sheryl where she's talking about how these players need time to adjust. And I thought it was interesting that she threw A'ja Wilson out there, who is, by all metrics, absolutely killing it this season. My MVP, she is dominating like crazy. But I want to take a step back and talk about Candace Parker. I think that's a good comparison, not because of play style or positionally, but because of the way that they equally were extremely good in their rookie seasons. For those that aren't aware, Candace Parker is one of the most storied players in WNBA history, and she was, I believe, the Rookie of the Year as well, with the stats of 18.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 3.4 assists. She's won NBA titles with multiple teams, been an MVP, but several times, in fact, and a Finals MVP. But I wanted to point out the fact that one thing that I really admire when I looked at her chart here, one thing I really admired was the consistency. She is super consistent across all facets of the game. I really did admire that. And, you know, the thing about this is they talked about how she was great in her first season, her rookie season, but she wasn't, quote unquote, dominating by their definition of it. And my next point is not to disparage Candace. It's not to talk badly of her in any way or to try to change the narrative in any way. So keep that in mind. But I've got to be extremely honest. Even in her MVP seasons across the board, her numbers are pretty in line with what they've been for her entire career. That, again, consistency. You love to see it. I mean, you can look at LeBron. He's going to give you largely the same numbers across year over year. You love to see that, right? So my point with that is that unless you're talking about team success, I'm not really sure how Candace also wasn't dominating her rookie season, right? I think that's just kind of my point, right? So it's either neither is or they both were, right? But they're taking the stance that neither was. And I'm not so sure that's fair in particular. Now, again, when you talk about accolades like championships and stuff like that, that obviously there's a lot of different factors that go into that versus just your own individual production and numbers that you can put out. So that's kind of my point, though. But looking at her, even on her, like I said, MVP years, her final MVP year, like all of that stuff, it's pretty in line with her rookie season. So by all metrics, she came in, again, in my opinion, dominating. And as I listen more to Sheryl, I think she's trying to make the point that even though they were killing it, mainly Caitlin, but she does bring up Reese here too, because they were the ones that were talked about a lot. That's fair. Even though they were killing it in college, don't expect them to come in and instantly do the same thing. And my response to that is, duh. I mean, that's a pretty normal phenomenon, right? Like that. I think that's pretty normal across the board. So I'm not really, but the thing is, she had an adjustment period and she did adjust afterwards. It doesn't really matter what she says. I still get that twinge of hater no matter what. Is anybody else feeling the same way?
Work and just her resiliency in, she just plays hard. Like once she gets in the gym and she's working on that, she gets some post moves. Like I definitely think she can average 20 points a game.
I think that. Yeah.
I don't know if that'll happen next year, but in the next couple of years.
About three. It's usually
I think so.
Like talents like this is like, it's like Luka, right? Luka's first year, great. Second year, we didn't see this, right? This is a whole different beast of a guy, right? There's people that we like, okay, they're gonna be dominant. Like their first year they're good, their second year they're already like pushing the envelope. But Luka's not in his prime where this is easy work for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
So I'd like to also say that if the argument is that there are going to be more dominant seasons from Caitlin, that's an absolute duh, obviously. She is going to get better. She is going to be tremendous. And I think that's why throughout this video, Rashad also was saying she's a dominant rookie. She's dominating as a rookie. And I think that if you put that qualifier on it, that just makes it make much more sense. And it's much fairer if you do that. Because, I mean, she's not dominating to an MVP caliber level. She's not pushing her team to be the #1 seed and all this stuff. She's not doing some of the stuff that she will probably do later in her career at this point. So if that is the qualifier, I'm here to say, Sheryl, I agree. But trust me, we are keeping our eyes on you because you're on Skip Bayless watch.